Hello everyone, I hope you guys are having a nice summer digital conference so far. There are a lot of amazing talks this year and I hope you guys will be learning a lot of new things. So no further ado, I'll start with my presentation. So I got a pro tip which I completely failed to follow, which was to keep the title short. But anyway, so title of my talk is Unleashing Your Creativity and Exploring Different Art Style with the Power of Post-Process Shader. My name is Ninad. I'm an artist working at Sumo Pune. I love creating environments. I love creating textures inside Substance Designer, and I love learning new things. This year I've been learning a lot of Unreal stuff, so creating blueprints, mostly technical stuff. Um, Most of my hobbies kind of align with my work, but outside my work, I do enjoy traveling. It's a shame that we couldn't make it to Sheffield, but maybe next year. Moving on, Spider-Verse. This is where everything starts. This is kind of core to my talk. We'll be covering a few topics. We'll be talking about inspiration. We'll be talking about stylization in games. We'll be talking about process, what it is, how do we use it. We'll be talking about resources where you guys can learn all of these things and apply in your own project. Yeah, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. So, what an amazing movie. If you guys haven't watched this movie, I would highly recommend you guys to watch this. It is one of the best movies I've ever seen. Because how often like do you see a piece of art which is so well crafted that it not only shatters your expectation but leaves you with a respect for the medium being animation here. The movie is an inspiration and a revelation. It started a new trend, a new way of doing animation, because they could have gone with a Pixar style, which was like really popular at the moment. It was like a photo surrealistic style, but they decided to not go with that and create their own unique art style, which I totally respect. Moving on, the movie has a lot of things. Movie has heart, and by heart I mean how you are able to connect with the characters. Miles is going with his own struggle, trying to live up to the expectations. Peter B. Parker is struggling with his marriage, and Gwen, whose best friend is died, is having a really hard time making friends, which we all guys can relate. Moving on, the movie is huge on styles, so it doesn't shy away from mixing different art styles, and these art style are very core to all of the Spider-Man in the movie. uh, they have their own unique art style, and the art style tells a little bit about their personality and also the world they come from, which is an insane concept. The movie has balls, big balls, to redefine what 3D animation could look like. That takes balls to take the risk and to create a movie on such a huge scale, and they did it so well. Um, let's talk about visual design. A lot of amazing visual design choices were made in this movie, and it is really important to study that. And also, if you are trying to create a style, it is really important to deconstruct what are the rules to make that makes that style work, right? um, yeah, so let's get into it. Let's talk about colors. So colors is really plays a really important role in this movie. I love how they used this chromatic aberration effect to convey this fake depth of field effect. It is the same effect that you get when you watch a 3D film and you remove the glasses and you can see the film gets blurry, right? So it is a very ingenious technique to actually blur things without actually blurring anything. It also kind of inspired from we have that ink spill, right? So there are some misprint in comic books. We'll have some frames shifted and you can see the bleeding of RGB colors. So it's very cool how they were able to implement that into 3D. Um, Also, color is very tied up to the drama and the mood of the scenes. Like how when Peter Parker dies, it has like a neutral color palette, and which it moves to a supernatural color palette with like very glowing colors and very saturated colors when they are fighting inside the super collider. Also, they used impact frames, which are like hand-drawn, really vibrant colors to convey the energy in the shot. Next, we have shapes. Shapes also really played a very important role in the movie. I love how they used smear frames, which is like a 2D technique, and they used this floater meshes to convey the motion blur and that impact, right? Uh, they also added outlines and text, which is like keeping true to the comic book aesthetics, right? And ingenious way of using dots and glitches, which are like simple shapes of circles and triangles that are conveying this supernatural effect of dimensions and particle system. Really cool effects. Next, we have light. Into the Spider-Verse approaches light in a very different way. What is unique that the light and the shadow also has textures. So in light you can see they have like this white dots, and in shadows they have this lines and cross hatching, which are like the common shading techniques we used in 2D medium. And also it's great how light interacts differently to all the different characters, which is really cool. Land of Discovery, a project that I've been working on. It started after watching the movie. I got really inspired. I wanted to try out a bunch of stuff and started learning loads of shit. So it became a testing ground for testing different shader, what works, what doesn't. So yeah, it's still in work in progress. Yeah. Mm, Steering away from realism. So when I started in the industry, I was really obsessed with the idea of realism and realistic graphics. I guess because I grew up with like where graphics were getting so much better and better every day, and it was really exciting. At this point, like we have like insane graphics, like where we are right now from the day all back like 10 years. So, but at certain point after creating a lot of realistic stuff, I kind of got bored of it. And I wanted to try something new, and watching this movie just really inspired me, and I started exploring the world of stylization. Some great example of stylization in games. Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom are a great example of cel shading. The game simplifies things while keeping its world really beautiful. Hades and Hades 2 by Supergiant Games also has this unique way of texturing things. It almost feel like you're inside a comic book. Um, Also recently released No Rest for the Wicked by Moon Studio has also a really unique art style. I love how they texture and their lighting is so dramatic. Really excited to play this game. Moving on, let's talk about 3D to 2D. We have two examples here. So on the top we have Mortal Kombat, and on the bottom we have Guilty Gear Strive. So Mortal Kombat, both of them obviously are really good fighting games. Mortal Kombat is going for that realistic graphics, which it does really well, and uh, Guilty Gear is going for like a very anime stylized look. It almost looks like a 2D, if 2D game we are playing. So how do you go from 3D to make it look like it's in 3D? So good way is to simplify things. You need to simplify the lighting. You need to simplify the textures, the amount of details, and also it's really important to add imperfections, because 3D has this habit to render everything perfectly. So you need to intentionally add more imperfections to the render. Moving on, let's talk about PBR and NPR. So PBR stands for physical based rendering, meaning which is actually used in most of the renders, meaning the render engine is trying to replicate the real world lighting. um, and for when it comes to NPR, we are not trying to replicate the which actually stands for non-photorealistic rendering. We are not trying to replicate the real world. Instead, we are aiming to shade it in a way that expresses the art style that we are going for. So in this screenshot on the left, it has like a PBR lighting, so it's a bit realistic lighting. Uh, and on the right, we have uh, render with cell shading. It has outlines, it has fog shader, and yeah, so it is much more stylized than the screenshot on the left. Moving on, some great examples of NPR. On the left, we have work by Pavel, and he's working inside Blender. You can obviously use any engine you want. You can use Unity, Blender, anything works as long as it has a shader graph system and shader editor, I mean, and also a toon shader. So, and on the right, we have a great scene by Ron Link. He's using Unreal Engine here, and he has a very 2D art style that is going on, and I love how he's even added that stylized look to his animation. It's a good idea to animate things on 2s and 4s to get that choppy look, and which works really well with the animated style. Moving on, how I applied NPR to my project. Obviously, you can use any engine. I personally used Unreal since most of my work is done inside Unreal. You can obviously use scripting, but I personally don't have a coding background, so I went with blueprints. Um, you can use blueprint systems to create shaders, and that is where the post-process shader comes into the equation. We'll be discussing about that in this talk later. Moving on, finding your own voice. Why create, like, why find your own voice? Why create your own art style? For me, I personally was getting kind of bored of doing realistic stuff. I felt like everything looked kind of same, and I wanted to expand my color palette, my color knowledge, and I wanted to make that has more make some art that has more feeling, and yeah, that kind of represents me, and what kind of art style that I like. So I started exploring more of stylized stuff, but for me, it is kind of tied up to what it means to be an artist. And for me, what an artist is someone who makes what he wants to express his work through art, and he makes art which leads to more questions, and then he makes more art finding answers to those questions, right? For example, let's take Spider-Verse. So like, why create a movie whose every frame looks like it was out of a comic book, right? I believe the creators of the movie wanted to make the audience feel what it felt reading comic books when they were kid, right? So yeah, which that vision actually led to advancement in technology and new techniques. Why why create your own art style? To make art that only you can make. I think everyone has their own taste on childhood and all things that they love and hate, and I think that that makes everyone unique. So I do believe that everyone can have their own different and unique way of doing things to make work that matters. Obviously, if you make your own different art style, you will obviously stand out to other artists, and to be yourself, because only you can be yourself. And that's actually, this line is portrayed into the movie also, that Miles cannot be like Peter Parker, or he cannot be like Gwen. Miles can only be Miles, right? So what the thing that makes you you will make you a better Spider-Man or a better artist. So be yourself. How? How do you find your own voice and create your own art style? By learning new shit. Learn new softwares, learn new mediums, learn how to cook, learn how to paint, learn how to sing. I think learning new things you'll be able to gather new skills, more knowledge, and at some point you'll be able to mix them together and create something different. Okay, moving on. Influences and inspiration. Art very much begins with the mimicry, but the same artist inspires one to explore the realm further. Art is self-expression, but self is defined by many tangible influence. So some of the influences and artists that I look up to, first on the list is Alberto Mielgo. He's an amazing artist, an art director whose work is insane. I would highly recommend you guys to check out his work. I love how he's able to simplify things, simplify reality into his paintings, and his work is has a lot of emotion, and how um, he always explores a different kind of relationship in his work. I would highly recommend you guys check out his short film that he directed for Love, Death and Robot named Jibaro. Yeah, uh, really amazing artist, truly a genius. Next is Mache Kuchara. The world of concept art was introduced to me by Mache and his amazing work. I love how he's always learning something new, always learning new softwares, new techniques, and implementing those into his projects. And it's really cool how he's always learning, really inspiring. So be like Mache. Next on the list is Cat's Eye, a godlike artist. I love their knowledge of colors. Their painting has so much story and so much emotions in their painting. I love their color palette, their use of color, their emotion, and their design skills are like on next level. Moving on, let's talk about post process, because I think a post process can be a great tool to help you build your own style, at least in 3D, right? So what is post process? Post process are the video effects and filters that you applied to a frame. Usually this frame is like the final render, so it works as like a filter. So you will be stacking things to get your final render, and on top of the final render you'll have your post process be applied. Next, to use post process inside Unreal, you need to use post process volume, which you can find under content and then in volumes. So post process volume has this lot of settings. You can change bloom, exposure, chromatic aberration. There are tons of settings. Also, it has a bounding box, meaning you can scale that box, and whenever you enter that box, all the effects that you have added will be visible inside that box. You can obviously go into settings and change it to unbound, meaning it will affect the whole environment. Yeah, but before post process mostly are screen space effect, meaning they are applied to whatever you see on the screen. Yeah. What is post-process shader? Finally, we are at the post-process shader. So post-process shaders are the materials that you can use within the post-process volume. They can alter your scene beyond what a normal post-process volume can do. These effects can be screen space, these effects can be area based. In this screenshot, I'm using a pixel shader. It gives that pixel art feel to it. Moving on, what are some pros of using post-process shader? So a great thing is like you can iterate. So once you have a library of shaders created, you can quickly swap in different shaders and test it with your environment and see what works, what doesn't, what needs to be tweaked. Next, we have stack and stacking. So you can stack a lot of different shaders on top of each other. So in this example, I'm first adding a fog shader. Then I'm adding a Kuhara filter, which gives that painterly feel. And then at the end, I'm adding cross hatching in shadows and cell shading and obviously outlines to give it that comic book feel, that stylized feel. I'll let it loop it again. Let's see. Raw, fog, Kuhara, cell shading and outline cross hatching. Awesome. Moving on, we can isolate the effect to any mesh. So if we want to separate our character from the environment, we can have our character with a different shader and different art style than that of character. Similar how they did in Spider-Verse. Next, some types of shaders. Most common and most famous one is cell shading. Usually cell shading, so usually the lighting uh, is from like 0 to 1, so it has like a gradient from white to black, and that soft gradient gives it that 3D look. But to get a more 2D look, you can simplify that gradient into like a band of color. So rather than having going from white to black and all the grays in between, we can have only three colors like white, gray and black for highlight, midtone and shadows. That will simplify that look and give it like that 2D look. Next on the list is outline shader, which there are great tutorials online, which we use. So for outline, we basically kind of use world normal and scene depth to calculate the outlines. Yeah. Next, we have comic book shader. So comic book shader, there can be a lot of different comic shaders. Maybe you are going for that printed look. Maybe you want a graphic novel look. Maybe you want a painterly look. That's up to you. Pixel shader is also a very simple shader actually. It just simplifies, like pixelates everything. You get that pixel art feel. And fog shader is adds a gradient of fog, a gradient of color to the whole environment. It is great if you want to go for a 2D look because it helps you reduce the depth in your environment. Moving on, let's talk about resources. All this learning would have not been possible without people before me exploring things and willing to share their workflows. So I've created a list of artists that you guys can check out, some great YouTube channels that you should follow. Recently there was a talk on Unreal on how to stylize things. You can definitely check that out. Next, there are few blogs that you must check. Tommy Tran and Martin Widdowson has a great documentation on cell shading. Delphine also has a great documentation on how to use layered system and post-process shader to get a great 2D to create a system that will kind of work for every environment and give every 3D environment that 2D feel that looks really cool. Next, thank you everyone. If you guys have any questions, you can obviously reach out. I've added my Instagram handle, and you can obviously reach out on ArtStation. So if you guys have any questions, just let me know. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to the Q&A segment of this talk. I'm Kaio and I'll be helping Ninad to respond to each of the questions you've submitted in the chat. But while we go, please feel free to keep sending your questions through. We will answer as many as we can in the time that we have. But with that, Ninad, let's dive straight into our first question, which comes from me because I was very inspired by your talk, and I'm just going to take this opportunity to ask some buzzing questions. Now, the first one I had is you've touched on how movies have influenced games, for example, Into the Spider-Verse. I wonder if there were any games that you think have influenced other movies or TV shows or media, like if you think the relationship kind of goes both ways.
Yeah, I think a lot of movies have inspired, like by inspired from games. Like there have been a lot of like dark games, like From Softwares. Like they have a tradition of creating these Dark Souls games, which are like really rough and very difficult. And yeah, they have this world which is like kind of almost feels like hopeless. Like you
Mm,
will like not survive this world. And I think a lot of like movies have kind of movies kind of tried to do that, and to create that world which is that epic, right? So yeah, definitely I think a lot of movies have done, and TV series have done, like gone with that dark theme to create that immersive world which we have in like games like Elden Ring and Dark Souls.
yeah, perfect. Especially with the new DLC coming out, I'm sure there's going to be even more
Yeah.
people inspired by games like Elden Ring. Next up, we have a question from Adele, who starts off with saying, "Thank you so much for this talk." Seconded. Um,
Thank you.
Adele then asks, "Super interesting to see how much creativity can be explored with shaders. Have you explored how accessibility can be affected by shaders, either negatively or positively?"
Mm, so accessibility, right? So of course there are a lot of drawbacks for using shaders, because they do add performance cost. So yeah, and also yeah, there is a lot of technical challenges that comes with shaders, because it's really difficult to learn and to get specific things that you want, right? And you have to go out and explore and try if I can make that style work, right? So yeah, there are a lot of challenges to that. um, but yeah, I think with like we have like a lot of powerful computing power at the moment, so I do think a lot of things are still possible and still accessible. I Although there is quite limited knowledge, still I would say people have done a lot of stylized stuff in different engines. There are like a lot of tutorials when it comes to Blender and render engines like Octane, uh, like comparing it to like Unreal, because Unreal has been doing a lot of realistic stuff. And I think when it comes to Unity, we have more like stylized tutorials and knowledge available and resources available online, because Unity was always branded as we are the best when it comes to stylized stuff, and Unreal always branded itself like we are the best when it comes to realistic stuff. um, but yeah, Unreal is doing both at this point. So like with Fortnite and everything, they are more jumping into stylized. And yeah, I think there is quite, I mean, it's still accessible, I think. So yeah, we can do quite a lot of amazing things in Unreal also. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm quite curious as well. I suppose that's accessibility from the developer side, and then if we consider the kind of player base, if there are people who might struggle to see certain colors, or just need the games they play to meet some kind of visual requirement that they might have.
Yeah.
If shaders are applied with any kind of post processing, is it easy to add features to support those types of players who maybe struggle to see hues of greens or reds to be able to tweak those?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think post process is a great tool for that, because it allows you to get more control onto like color, and it's easy to change those things, right? So also, always thought like there could be a setting where like if you're playing like a GTA, right? And there is a setting if you want to change the art style from hyper realistic to hyper stylized, so there will be settings, and like the same game has like different art style. That would be so cool, right? And that can be done with post process. Yeah.
Fantastic. The future looks bright. That leads us nicely into our next question from Gabriella, who asks, oh, they start off by thanking you for the talk as well.
Thank
Lots of fans in the chat. But then Gabriella asks, do you have to put a lot of planning and effort into the textures for the meshes before you set up the post-processing effect? That's an interesting question. Yeah, the kind of prep required.
Yeah, I think that should be planned because they can alter it a lot, like the look and the feel of the scene. So it is a good idea to stay true to the style. Like it's a good idea to not only like work on post process, but also have your texture true to be true to that style. So if you're going for a watercolor effect, you need to create a textures which have that watercolor feel, and they also have a post process that gives that effect. So I don't think post process alone is enough to get that to nail down that style. So it is important to create textures, create your mesh specific to that style. Yeah, to be true to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Kind of develop the title in line with the vision for how the game will look.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Next question we've had come through. What is your pre-process for making any artwork? And they've just had a bit more detail. They've asked, what I mean to ask is, how do you balance your thoughts and stay on track without getting lost in the reference gathering stage and wandering off from your initial idea? I think this asker in particular is still learning this process, and mentioned they tend to get quite overwhelmed by, I suppose, the breadth of possibilities that are available
Yeah.
to them at the planning stage.
Yeah, I mean that always happens, but usually there is one reference that is like that stands above all. So you are like for that, like that is your main reference, and then you try to find out different reference that will help you to match that style. So yeah, like obviously there's always confusion. Like there are so many different amazing art style you can go with. But once you have decided one art style, you need to deconstruct what are the rules of basically that art style, like what makes it work. So yeah, just have some rules written, and then according to those rules, you can have more clarity on what kind of textures I need to create. And yeah, then you basically have an art style across the pipeline.
That's great. I mean, great answer. Yeah, totally. I mean, let the rules be your north star, I guess, as you go through the process to help keep you on track. That makes a lot of sense. That's a good opportunity for me to sneak in another question that I was curious to ask. So I wondered, for a large scale project that involves many creatives who are trying to create, kind of a harmonious look and feel for a world,
Yeah.
do you find it's more challenging to still instill a sense of self-identity in your art? You mentioned in your talk, make it feel like your own and bring your own kind of personality to it. I just wonder if that gets at all tricky for larger projects and how you might manage that.
Yeah, that is true. Actually, in a big project where there are so many people, right? It's difficult to get your own voice into that. So I would, but still, usually, like the art style needs to be defined by the art director, and like we all like kind of need to understand what the story is, what the look, what kind of look we are going for, and we kind of tailor our art towards that, right? But obviously if you want to explore yourself, it has to be done with like personal art. And so I highly recommend everyone to like always work on your personal stuff. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. And this next question, again, I'm just going to try and sneak in here. This is slightly informed by a recent dev video I saw that was published about Still Wakes the Deep, obviously a title that's just been released. And I think it was the art director who mentioned in this video that they took thousands of pictures of oil rigs and industrial piping and all of these things to kind of help inform what the world was going to look like. I wondered if you had a similar process. You mentioned a couple of your own sources of inspiration and other artists, but if you tend to, while traveling or just kind of out and about as part of your day to day, I don't know, take pictures or carry a notepad or kind of, do you ever tend to be inspired by something you see out and try and find a way of capture that to then inspire and inform your work? Is that part of your process?
Yeah, definitely. Like reality is the best inspiration out there. So if you find something beautiful, just go and like capture it. And of course, that will help you someday in the future. So even when I'm working on my project, I always gather. So if I'm going for very stylized look, then I will study the artist and their paintings. And but if I want to go from something realistic, or maybe you want that art style into something realistic, something you found like somewhere near, which you thought was really beautiful. So yeah, you can use that art style and work, uh, make that reality possible. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Um, Another question. So, and this is an interesting one, I suppose, just with where we are, particularly for kind of console creators and makers, and kind of how their marketing devices and the way that games could be played. We often see an emphasis on kind of graphical fidelity in the industry and trying to create
Yeah.
things that are as realistic as possible.
Yeah.
I wondered, and this is just a personal take, would you like to see more titles utilize shaders to make their games stand out and kind of go in a more artistic direction? Do you think there's room for that area of gaming to grow, or yeah, how do you kind of feel
I
about that, those
personally,
titles?
like, I would want to explore more stylized stuff. And yeah, I mean, because everything is getting realistic and budgets are like rising, more technical thinking, and it's just yeah, budgets are increasing because of like we are continuously investing more on like how it should look. But it should more, the game's more focus should like most important focus should be like it should be fun and should be. And yeah, it's a virtual world, it doesn't have to be completely real. Of course, I love reality, it's not like that. Like there are some amazing stunning games which are like immersive and like real, but I think stylized game are like at the moment are doing better it seems like in realistic games. I don't know.
No, I'd have to agree. I don't think there are particular titles that have come out over the years, and you can kind of see some that age very gracefully,
Yeah,
and you can see
and
it's because
even
they had a
yeah,
particular look and style.
GTA and all those games that I used to play back, like Sands of Time and Prince of Persia. I mean, from today's standards, obviously they are like very outdated in terms of graphics, but they were so much fun to play, and I miss those days, honestly.
Absolutely, yeah, same, absolutely the same. I wondered actually, are there any titles that you've played recently that you found particularly inspiring for the art style that they've brought in?
So, I mean, Zelda was really amazing. Hades was one of the like games which really was cool.
Yes,
A lot of amazing dialogues and really good story. So yeah, and stylized games are really inspiring.
yeah, couldn't agree more. Well, fantastic. Well, I think we've reached the end of some of the questions that have come through. Although, of course, this isn't a missed opportunity for anyone in the chat who's enjoyed your talk. I know that we've got networking sessions throughout the day, where there might be an opportunity to ask you questions if any do come up. And equally, I'm sure anyone in the chat can just reach out to you directly on Teams and pose any questions that they have.
Yeah, for sure.
But with that, everyone in the chat, please join me in congratulating Inad for an outstanding talk. I found this incredibly enriching and
Thank you.
rewarding to watch. Very, very inspiring. So thank you for pulling it together.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
you've been outstanding. No, thank you. Now, everyone, we'll start to close things down. So I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, morning, afternoon, evening, depending on what time zone you're in, and hope to see you in another session. But for now, take care. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.